davening. We're holding chapter 12, getting ready for davening. And we are going to first start with the story of the Baal Shem Tov. So it says like this. I heard the story. It's in honor of the hostages, especially one of the last hostages who came out and was describing mamish horrible experiences. Mamish, I mean, abuse daily for 2 years, cried every day, sexually, physically, verbally. I mean, just mamish, the most horrible abuse for 2 years. He came out, one of the last hostages that came out the past few weeks. And so I wanted to dedicate the story to all the hostages, but specifically to him for what he suffered through. The story of the Baal Shem Tov goes that the Baal Shem Tov was always a good vach, everyone. So the Baal Shem Tov was always would get messages from Hashem. Sometimes he understood from heaven that he has to do things. Sometimes he understood, sometimes less. So he got a message that he has to go Shabbos to a certain place. He doesn't know where, and so So the custom was they just get the horse and buggy ready, and Alexi, who was the wagon driver, knew that there wasn't nothing to do with him. He wouldn't even hold the reins. He wouldn't even face the horses. He would just let the horses run, and the horses start traveling like they always did, up mountains, down through valleys, cities, villages, and really super fast. It's called Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, very connected to this big parsha. To like Eliezer was able to get to Rivka in the same day, which is 1,000 kilometers maybe. So the wagon stops in front of this property that has this beautiful palace and also this rundown shack. But the horse and buggy stops outside the shack, and Baal Shem Tov knows that he has to go for Shabbos to this place. So because that was the message. So out comes this angry, abusive person, mamish shouting and screaming, maybe physical also, mamish beating, like really to the Baal Shem Tov and his students. And he says, "What are you doing? Get off my property." He says, "We have to be here for Shabbos." So he really pleads with the person. So he lets him stay for Shabbos. But he mamish abuses them the whole Shabbos, again, screaming, shouting, doesn't let them do Kiddush or daven, just really destroyed an entire Shabbos of the Baal Shem Tov and his students. And the Baal Shem Tov knows he has to be here. Comes Motzaei Shabbos, like we're tonight, and the door of the beautiful palace that's next to this broken house opens up, and out comes this lovely woman, and she walks into the shack, and she says to the Baal Shem Tov and his students, "Holy Baal Shem Tov, it would be my great honor if you come into my house, my palace, and do the final meal, the meal of King David, the Malav Malka, that we accompany Shabbos out to do it in my home." So the Baal Shem Tov comes into the house and enters the house with his students. It's a beautiful house and a beautiful setup, and the table set lovely for this Malav Malka, for this final meal. And she says to the Baal Shem Tov, I would love to introduce you to my husband." And the door opens, and out comes the same person who was abusing them the whole Shabbos, and he's dressed like with his beautiful Shabbos clothing and his shtreimel. And she says to the Baal Shem Tov, and obviously everyone's wondering what's happening. So she says to the Baal Shem Tov, Baal Shem Tov, do you recognize me? And he says, he looks and says, "Oh, are you possibly Fega, the dishwasher in my house, who used to wash my dishes, the orphan?" He says, "Yes, that's me, I'm Fega. And I want to tell you something. One day I was washing the dishes, and I was a young, poor orphan, had very little clothing, or my hygiene, my cleanliness wasn't there. I mean, she lived like a poor orphan." And she said, the Rebbitzin, Mrs. Baal Shem Tov, her name was Rachaleah, the holy wife of the Baal Shem Tov, she saw that I had lice in my hair. So she pulled out the lice comb, and she started to very aggressively comb my hair to try to get the lice out. But while she was doing that, she was mamish hurting me. Every time she put the comb in, it was pulling at my hair, and because her hair wasn't the way it was, she was a poor girl, she didn't have it washed properly. It was mamish pulling out chunks of hair. She's screaming and begging the Baal Shem Tov's wife to please stop. She's hurting her. And she says, and I look up and I see you're standing there and you're not saying anything. She says at that moment, it was decreed in heaven that you lost your portion in the world to come because you didn't say anything. Everyone makes mistakes, but the Baal Shem Tov is supposed to be sensitive to every tear, and here he just says nothing to his wife, who's really hurting this young girl. Years went on. I left your house and I got married, and I married this wonderful man who's also the head of the 36 tzaddikim. And when I get married, he tells me, Fegi, I want you to know that on your account, obviously you're not responsible, but on your account, you're part of the story. The Baal Shem Tov lost his portion in the world to come. And I felt horrible and bad and guilty, and I begged him, my husband, to figure out a way to help the Baal Shem Tov. So after many davening and all that, it was decreed that in heaven, if the Baal Shem Tov spends an abusive, painful Shabbos, so that will be a kapara and atonement that he'll get his olam haba back. So she says, I want you to know that now you have your your world to come back. And so I was thinking about telling the story or not. It's not necessarily a positive story, but I think there could be an underlining message over here, and maybe this is an explanation. It's my own idea. Is that everything that God expects from us, He has to do. It says, "Magid dvarav Yaakov chukav v'mishpatav l'Yisrael." If God expects certain behaviors from us, He has to behave the same way. It could be possibly the Baal Shem Tov kept his mouth shut and accepted a harsh punishment for the Baal Shem Tov, a Shabbos of abuse like that. So any time a person cries, when you have someone crying in the tunnel, like this person describes, mamish, horrible crying for 2 years, Hashem has to also look in the mirror and say, why was he quiet for 2 years listening to these cries? And maybe he also has to pay, and he'll pay with bringing Be'ezus Hashem, King David and the Mashiach and Eliyahu Hanavi speedily in our time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, let's start learning some halachos on the laws of davening. Okay, I believe we're holding over here. We're holding in law number 7, in chapter 12. It says like this, I believe so, yes. A person should make every serious effort, if possible, to pray, to daven with a minyan. If we learned this, we'll just do it again. Like it says, "V'ani tefilasi lecha eis ratzain." That ani tefilasi lecha Hashem, I pray to Hashem eis ratzain, in a time of desire. Emasai eis ratzain, when is it a time of desire? V'shasha tzibur mispalim, when you daven with a minyan, with a congregation, which is 10 men. Uchsiv koyam Hashem, so said the Lord. V'eis ratzain inisicha, when there's a moment of desire, is when I will respond to you, and it's the moment of desire when the congregation davens with a full minyan. Here's another idea. God is never disgusted when it's the congregation davening. So even if the individual who's davening, maybe God's saying, whoa, 1 second, were you davening to me? I saw what you did. So when you daven with a minyan, it doesn't have any disgust, so to say, to God. And he says, even if part of the congregation are sinners, as we know, it says, Hein el kabir v'lo yimos. It says, behold, Hashem is mighty, meaning He is the God of the multitude, yet He does not despise anyone. And it says, it quotes from Tehillim chapter 50, that it says, that He redeemed my soul in peace from impending battle for the sake of the many. So the many is a reference to the minyan that were with me. Okay, so let's see the footnotes on this. He quotes the sources. Okay. So basically, he quotes the sources. This is an obvious halacha. Now he says the law like this. If someone were to be walking on the road, means you're traveling, you reach the place where you want to rest. If ahead of him or him is 4 milin, which is let's say a distance of he's in the Shabbos in foot number 17, is would be 8,000 amos, cubic amos. So it's about 12,000 feet ahead of you, and over there would be a minyan, but where you are now is not. There is no minyan. If you could go there when it's still day, and so you don't have to travel alone by night, which would be dangerous. You can't stop here. You have to continue the additional 8,000 amos, which is 4 meal, so you could be with a minyan. So if you're traveling and you stop before, and if you want to go to the hotel, but you realize there's no minyan in your area, but if you drive another 4 meal, which is about let's say 4 miles or so. So you would have to continue your trip until you get to a place where there's a minyan. Means past that, we don't expect you to continue to travel for a minyan. But if it's within that distance, you should. Hold on, Aaron, let me just finish the law. But what happens if the minyan is behind you? You passed it already. Well, the achar of tzarach leilach meal, to go backwards, means if you pass the minyan, you only have to return 1 meal, which is again 2,000 amish, which is around 3,000 feet. So you should daven with the congregation, with the minyan. And we call it shekain, the Rebbe says even more so. You shouldn't leave an area where there's a minyan if you could wait for the minyan and then travel and get to your location when it's still day. So if you would wait for the minyan, it would cause that you travel alone at night, which is dangerous. That's something else to consider. But if you could travel that same day and just wait for the minyan, so you should wait for the minyan. So we see again from these two halachos, these two laws, the importance for a person to try to daven with a congregation of 10 people with a minyan. Yes, Aaron.
Okay. The two questions. Number one, you usually pray at a regular place. You know where you pray, but you could pass a couple of shuls, and on your way, they ask you, they need a minyan. And so, what's your obligation to go to your regular shul? And you know they have a minyan. They're not going to be lacking. And this one needs you. What's your obligation? The second question is can you, because I heard some people say you shouldn't, but can you go on a vacation when you know there will be no place to get a minyan?
Okay, these are two both excellent questions. And where I live in Yerushalayim, I face that question all the time about the Asiri, the 10, could you complete a minyan? And I'm on my way to my minyan. And by me, sometimes it's not just a question of the place where I'm used to, but the nusach, the style of davening, which is, I daven nusach Chabad, nusach Hari, and especially if it's a Shabbos or Yom Tov, that's what I prefer to daven. That's what I would like to daven in. And if someone could call me in with another nusach, I'd rather not. It's an excellent question. I've thought about it many times, and it happens a lot of the times also on, to me, it would happen on Yom Kippur, where people wanted to have these private minyanim, these private minions, but they didn't have enough people. Now, my opinion is I don't have a source for it. So there's a strong importance that we're going to learn about davening in your shul, sitting in your place, being of consistency when it comes to davening. Person should be known to daven in a certain place. There's that idea in halacha, for instance. There's an idea in halacha where you have to be. This is your minyan, this is your daven. And then the other thing to consider is why do they have their own minyan if they don't have a minyan? Means to say, if they just want to break off and have their own minyan, when what responsibility is that on you? When they could also go to another minyan. If you're in a place where there's plenty of shuls, and they just decided to have their own private minyan, if they can't put it together, then why is that a responsibility to you? So a strict letter of the law, again, depending on all the details of why there's a minyan, why don't they have a minyan? And a lot of times also they're not honest, maybe 100% with you're the 10th man, you walk in, you're the first man. So then it's a time thing. So yeah, these are all things to consider. A very good question. I don't have a clarity myself. I think that if it's in a situation where it's a serious problem where they need a minyan, whether it's, let's say, some people have they need a minyan in the house of a mourner. So then I would say for sure, if they're calling you to the house of a mourner, absolutely go to that house, even if you're not going to go to your minyan, because the mourner has to daven in the morning in the house of a mourner. But if you're talking about a minyan that's established shul that just can't figure out to get a minyan, so and you're comfortable only davening in your shul. So if you want to do acts, just to be a person that's available, that's I think a choice that you can make. But if you feel more comfortable and you daven better in your location, I would say to continue to your location. Or if you're just looking for any minyan, that's something else. But if you have your specific place, I think in that case, and that's where you daven, you're comfortable, your siddur is where you concentrate. So I would say that that's not a responsibility for you. But again, depending on why there's that minyan. Your second question was, if I remember correctly, Aaron, you said about going on a vacation that there's no minyan. That's another very good question. And it's probably not so simple. Again, you have to ask a rabbi in the situation of why you're going on the vacation. Sometimes a vacation could be, a very important ingredient to shalom bayis, the family peace, and to keeping the couple happy. And if you were really to disappoint your wife, or the wife to disappoint her husband for that matter, because you don't want to go anywhere where there's not a minyan. So that was, again, you would ask your rabbi about that, but just straight up, without any complications, a person should try to be around the minyan. And there's people that make sure they'll vacation in Miami, they'll vacation here. So there's very wealthy people that fly a minyan with them. But if most of us that can't afford that, yeah, it's a very good question. And I'm not saying that everyone holds by it by that behavior, like you said, but a strict letter of the law, you should not travel with his nominee. Does that answer your question, Aaron?
Yeah, it answers my question. But the one thing about that you said, it comes with me. So, like, I've had it where someone needed it was the time that they could actually spend to pray, and they were mourning. Another time, it was a Sephardic minyan, and though my son can do both, so he can even hazen as a Sephardic or a Ashkenaz. But for me, I just rather go to my Ashkenaz
So,
minyan.
so, so, so in that, if it's a shul and you're in Brooklyn, where there's again, when I'm in Yerushalayim, there's an app that I have that works on a GPS that I could. I mean, in places like Seattle, won't have many options, but in Israel, I could put in, within 5 miles, within 2 miles, within 100 feet, where's the closest minyan, where's the closest shul, and it'll tell me everything. It'll show me where people get together in an office to where there's actual Beit Knesset, a synagogue, and what time they daven, and there's always people updating. So you have a place like Yerushalayim that's full of minyanim. So if they can't put together 10 people, so it's not your responsibility to make their minyan. They could all go down the street where there's another minyan. So then I would say in that case that's not your responsibility, especially if you don't feel comfortable davening there. It's not your kind of style, and it throws you off, and your davening is gonna be affected.
But one time, I just giving you
If
this
it's a
one,
house of, but if it's a house of a mourner, it's different.
right? But one time, um, one of the rabbis happened to be my son's teacher back in high school. So whenever he asked me, they don't have a minyan, I just happened to go because he taught my son, and I can't say no. But
Okay, so
it's
that's your
Sephardic.
product. That's your choice.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay. So I don't have to.
yeah, let's
This is the
continue.
one.
You
Thank
asked to
you.
go you're welcome. You must go 4 mil ahead in order to pray with the congregation. According to the Mishnah Brura, you are only obligated to go 4 mil. Again, 4 mil is 8,000 amos, which is roughly about 12 to 13, 14,000, 1,400 feet. So he says you are only for 14,000 feet. Sorry, you're only obligated to go 4 mil to pray with the congregation for the morning shachris, but not at night. So the Mishnah Brura makes a difference between the morning. Doesn't say anything right over here about the afternoon, but I'm assuming he means that he says only shachris. So that's anything that's not shachris is mincha ma'ariv. Okay, let's go to halacha number 9. Mitzvah gedayla. It's a great mitzvah. It's a tremendous mitzvah. The hispalel bebeis haknesses, to daven in a shul, a place where they gather for davening. Oy bebeis hamedrash, or a place of study. Beis hamedrash is a lot of places that have a yeshiva. Yeshiva has also a minyan, so or a beis medrash. Shehem mekaymis mukudashim. These are sanctified places. Va'afilu im lepamim misbatel she'ein sham minyan. Mikol makim mitzvah lispal sham b'yichidas. Even if he says that for some reason they don't have a minyan, it's better to daven in a beis haknesses, in a beis hamedrash, a synagogue, or a yeshiva, a shul, a place of learning, because even if you have to daven alone. Even because they're sanctified places. Let's see what does he mean. Ram is a person who's learning in the yeshiva. He can make a minyan in the base medrash, even though he could leave the base medrash and go into a shul. Today, a lot of them are mixed. A lot of shuls don't have activities during the day, so they kind of lease or whatever want to have a kollel or something in the place learning while they're there. So it's kind of both. But if you don't learn in a yeshiva, you're just a person who has a regular, schedule. So for you, better is the spalel bebeis hakneses sheyesh bei ravam. Better to go to a shul versus the yeshiva. And a lot of people have that choice. In London, there's the yeshiva minyan, and then there's the shul minyan. Many places, there's the yeshiva minyan and the shul minyan. So he says that's better to go to the shul minyan. If obviously he says why, because the shul minyan has a larger crowd, and there's a pasuk uberoiv am hadras melech. The beroiv am hadras melech means that in the multitude of people is the glory of the king. So Hashem likes more people. Go to a place where there's more people. Now, sometimes the Beis Medrash has tons of people. And again, back to Aaron's question, if you're really comfortable davening in a yeshiva, like there's a lot of people that like to go to the yeshiva minyan on Shabbos. I remember my grandfather, Olav Hashem, Mr. Weiss, when he would come to Seattle. So my father at those days had yeshiva. And yeshiva minyan wasn't far from the Chabad house minyan. So he would daven in the yeshiva minyan. That's where he felt more comfortable. So if it's mamish something you feel more comfortable, then that's probably a little different. But he's saying, so we basically said three things here. In general, a person should go to Beis Knesses. If you should make sure to daven in a Beis Knesses or Beis Medrash. Even if there's no minyan to daven alone, it's better to daven in a holy place. What is he excluding? I'm assuming maybe possibly he's excluding. We have today a lot of put together minions. Let's all meet downstairs in the lobby and daven. In the office building. That you have in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. There's many places that people meet up at set times. It's not a shul. It's not a Beis Medrash. It's just a place where people gather. Where sitting here and we work. We work every day. There's a minyan where people leave at 2:00 to daven mincha. It's not a Beis Knesses or a Beis Medrash. We take a room. It's easy. It's convenient for people to just go over here than to have to go downstairs outside and find and schedule the minyan. So he's saying there's an idea even. It seems like that what he's saying is that even to daven yechidus, but to daven in a shul versus to not. I'm assuming that's what he's saying. V'im yesh be'iroi shnei batei knesiyos. What happens if you have a city that has more than one shul? Yelech laharachik. This we have a Gemara. Go maybe walk to the one further away. Again, if all things equal, that you could daven in either one. You're more comfortable davening in either one. This is a question of distance. To walk the distance is a good thing, because you're walking for Hashem. Then you have reward for every step you take. Amr Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the famous Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who was kind of both. He switched though. He was kind of one of those rabbis who was a student of Rebbe in the Mishnah times. He's a bit of a Mishnah sage and also a Talmudic sage. He's kind of in between. It says that Rabbi Shimon ben Levi says a person should always awaken early to go to the shul, to the Beis Knesses, to be from the first 10. It's a big deal to be from the first, but to make up the 10. Let's say I have a minyan, there's 20, 30, 40 people, right? So try to be from the first 10. So you're one of the people who actually make the minyan. Everyone afterwards is just, alternates, extras. Even if 100 people come after you, you get the reward against everyone because you made the minyan. There's some people, I heard a story once of someone in Columbus, Ohio, who even went to a court, went to a bezdin, because he wanted to be the one who comes first to the shul, not just from the first 10, but from the first to the shul, to open the lights, to be the first person in the shul. So he'd wake up early, 10 to 15 minutes. And when he told someone that he's so excited about his mitzvah of being the first person in the shul, the person thought to himself, whatever, you could ask why, that, why should that person be the first person in the shul? I want to be the first person in the shul, right? He didn't think about it, but he heard it. So he came 5 minutes earlier. And the next person came 5 minutes earlier, and they all came in a situation, they're waking up 3 a.m. So they had to go to the court, to the bezdin, to figure it out. Our rabbis have also taught us, whoever goes in the morning or an evening to the synagogue or the Beis Medrash, again, if that's your choice, in the proper time, and remains there the proper amount of time, and you behave properly in a sanctified way, This is merits you to be Zarichel Arichasam, you should live a long life. The Chsiv, as it says, Ashrei Adam Shemei Ali, fortunate is the man who listens to me. Al Delay Sai Yom, sorry. Ashi Shemele Lishkoid Adolai Saisa Yom Yom Lishmar Mezuzais Psachai. Fortunate is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my door, which is an indication of a person who comes to shul. Hold on, Aaron. Uchsiva Basrein, it says afterwards, Kimoitzi Ma'atzei Chayim, for whoever finds me finds life. So if a person is part of the minyan in the shul, and in a consistent way, and in a respectable way, and in a proper manner of time, will be merit to Arichas Yamim for a long life. Yes, Aaron.
Just a quick question. What's the appropriate amount of time?
Let's see if they mention that in the footnotes first. Okay, Beis Medrash, she says, is a house of study. 20 is even if it happens that there is no minyan. Let's see that I'm interested in this footnote. 10 people which form a quorum necessary for congregational prayer. Nevertheless, it's better to pray in a house with a minyan rather than in a synagogue without a minyan. Oh, okay. So seemingly I misunderstood the halacha here. According to the Chabad.org, is that if you're davening alone anyways, better to daven alone in a shul than to daven alone, or a Beis Medrash than to daven alone just at home. But if there's a minyan that's not in a house of prayer or a house of study, better go to the minyan than to daven alone in the house of prayer or house of study. Okay, so that clear. So it would be right to daven in the WeWork in the office lobby, or in this. There's even minyanim that are set every day on the street. They meet up outside a store on the sidewalk. Those are better. At least you're davening with 10. That trumps even to daven alone in a minyan. But if you say there's no minyan in the shul anyways, I might as well daven at home. No, better walk to the shul to daven in a place of sanctity. Even though the wording seems a little challenging, he could have said that more clearly, because in the Hebrew it said "Afilim pavim mitzvat l'sham she'ein sham minyan mikol makam mitzvah sham yechidus." It's not much for the. He should have said if you can't find another minyan. But okay.
If it's time to take out the Torah, can you take out the Torah?
No, we don't take out a Torah without a minyan.
Okay.
Okay, 21, unless you have any special exception for that. 22, 23, 24, 25. No, so it doesn't say the appropriate amount of time. Appropriate amount of time is Mshabi to learn something. It means, this idea of people wrapping their tefillin and running, or just running out. But like there's a certain, you see certain people that are very conscious of how they leave and enter a shul. And they're kind of, first of all, you're supposed to run to the shul. But once you get there, you walk in respectively. And you give yourself time. There's a way of giving yourself time, or for coming to the last minute and wrapping your film and being the first person in, the last person in, the first person out. So it's a good question. What is the exact amount of time? I'll check if I could find that out. But otherwise, on your own understanding is to give that kind of extra gap, that extra, you have in a book, you have the white around the letters, not to just take every inch up. It's only the moment of praying, just to kind of show that you're actually you appreciate spending time in the shul. Let's do one more law, unless anyone else has any questions on this law. Okay. Okay, this could get very challenging in certain environments. You should select the synagogue and the shul, again, what Aaron asked before, that you daven in regularly. You should have your regular synagogue, not just bouncing around. Now here's where it gets a little bit. Sometimes people take this. This is one of the spaces where people could sometimes have disagreements. Make sure you have your place. Problem is sometimes two people think they have the same place. Or how do you behave if a guest comes and sits in your place? And how is that different if a member sits in your place? Who knows that that's your place? So everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. Some people get too extreme, like we learned in Likutei Torah from the Alter Rebbe, that a shul has a lot of sometimes negative energy, because if you don't know how to focus the energy of the tefilah, it brings a lot of negative energy that could actually create fighting. So therefore, people who maybe it's beneath them to fight about certain things, we find a lot of there's fights and disagreements, and people are annoyed with each other in the shul. So one of the things that could trigger it is a place. So if you ever have an issue, if you have a place, someone sits in your place, you have disagreement, instead of getting all worked up, best right away to go to the rabbi or to the gabbai to work it out. But also you have to be sensitive. If guests come, not to be too aggressive. It's not polite. And he says it doesn't have to be exactly the 2 inches. Everything within 4 cubits is your place. So if someone's standing exactly on your place, if you go next to him or her, it's also okay. And here he says, if possible, again, without too much lachatz, too much pressure, try to find a place by the wall. We find by Chizkiah, the king, when he davened by the wall. So this idea of davening by the wall. So if you can, again, there's only that much wall space. Here he says, better not to stand or sit next to a wicked, evil person. They have to figure that one out also, not to say, well, I can't daven next to you because I decided you're an evil person. That's also, again, leaves room for conflict and for hurtfulness, etc. And if you daven at home for whatever reason, make a set place in your house that you daven. That's the place you daven. That's your corner, and also helps that the kids, everyone knows that that's your place. You're davening now, and they won't bother you. So let's just finish the footnotes, and there's no question. We're going to end here. A specific place, he says, in other words, within the synagogue or base medrash, to have your place. Okay, so i.e. of your designated spot. So you don't have to be exactly your feet standing on this, on this little tile. Within 4 cubits is a makom. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is of getting rid of a lot of issues by making that little distinction of giving you 4 amas. It doesn't have to be exactly your spot. Okay, anyone else have any questions? Well, thank you again for joining and our short class for Saturday for Motzaei Shabbos, and hope to see you guys in the continuing classes.